I am good. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
This was released in 98, Best Picture 99?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you good?
I'm good.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again. I'm gonna see if I actually hit record. I think I did. Yes, I did.
Very important. Okay.
All right.
We would be seriously bummed if you hadn't.
Let's take 2.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Editing the Academy. I'm Daryl.
I'm Laura.
And Laura, I already did the clap because I don't know, decided to do it early.
That's okay. I think we have a floating clap. It just fits in where we fits in.
One time it'll just be at the end, and that's a wrap.
Maybe we should try that this time.
What's the year and what are the films that we're here to talk about today?
All right. These are the films that were released in 1998, and they were up for Best Picture in 1999.
Okay. So the new segment that I'm doing, the top 5 by gross.
We haven't listed the movies yet.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's okay. It is.
I'm all sorts of off. It's like pouring down rain.
Pouring down rain. We have a Rottweiler in the kitchen. There's a lot of things happening here.
Yeah.
You just don't know about. Okay. It is Elizabeth, Life is Beautiful, Saving Private Ryan, Shakespeare in Love, and The Thin Red Line.
The Thin Red Line.
Okay.
This was kind of a slog of a year.
It was hard to get through. There were no happy endings in this bunch.
There were no happy endings. Most of the movies were not happy. Inspiring, I would say, some of them.
A few, yeah.
But overall, yeah, a slog.
Yep.
I had seen all of these previously.
I have as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So the top 5 that year, I'm going to read the other notables and I'm going to see if you can guess any of them.
Okay.
Other notables released in 98, Armageddon, There's Something About Mary, The Waterboy, one of my top 20s, The Legend of 1900, The Waking of Ned Devine, a really cute Irish film.
Love that movie.
Yeah. Simple Plan, which is a good kind of mystery thriller thing. The Man in the Iron Mask, The Horse Whisperer, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Love that movie.
Yeah, Guy Ritchie's first. Deep Impact, Wild Things, which for some reason is still a cult classic now. I don't get it.
It's fine.
It's the lesbian makeout scene, I think. Out of Sight, Pleasantville, Practical Magic, and
Love that.
The Wedding Singer.
Okay, I'm going to go with Armageddon.
Okay, that was number 2.
Something About Mary.
That's number 4.
The Wedding Singer.
Nope, did not make the top 5.
Deep Impact.
Nope.
All right, tell me.
So, The Waterboy was number 5.
Okay.
Something About Mary, number 4. Saving Private Ryan was number 3.
Okay, I didn't even think about this list. All right.
Armageddon, number 2. And then, because it was released so late the year previously,
Titanic.
Titanic was number 1 for the year.
That's funny. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Okay.
When I saw it, I thought there was a mistake, and so I had to double check. But
Does
no,
make sense.
it was released so late in the year. It made like $150 million in a couple months in the year it was released, and then made all the money the next year.
Okay.
Because it stuck around forever. You said you wanted to do these in a particular order. I always go alphabetical,
Yep.
so you tell me what you want to do.
Well, I think we can start with Elizabeth.
Okay.
But then I want to mess around with the order
All
a
right.
little bit, if that's okay. And you need to stop slamming the papers on the table because it bothers the podcast.
Oh.
Sarah, you edit the video, I edit the podcast, and I keep getting slamming noises.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's just a habit when you
I
have
know.
papers like...
Exactly. Okay.
All right, so apologies for those that have trouble with, what is it called, AMSR or something
Yes.
like that. Elizabeth was directed by Shakar Kapoor, written by Michael Hurst, stars Kate Blanchett, with Jeffrey Rush, Christopher Eccleston, Joseph Fiennes, John Gielgud, and Richard Attenborough. Now, Sir Richard Attenborough was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup, Best Original Score, and the only thing it won for was Best Makeup. Go with some fun facts.
All right. Fun facts are many years later, there was this sequel called Elizabeth the Golden Age.
Yep.
Also, Kate Blanchett and Jeffrey Rush reprising their roles. The role of the Pope that was played by John Gielgud was originally offered to Marlon Brando.
Oh.
And apparently several people in the cast did not want to work with him.
So
that's why he didn't actually get it. And then the other fun fact I have is that it is very historically inaccurate.
Yes.
I stole the summary this time from the IMDb logline, which is the early years of the reign of Elizabeth I of England and her difficult task of learning what is necessary to be a monarch.
Okay, I think that fits.
Fair enough.
This is how I discovered Cate Blanchett. I know she's been in other things for, I think,
Yeah.
a lot of people, because she was in the leading role of this, and it was a very celebrated film. I think a lot of people discovered her
I
this
agree
way.
with that, yes. I did as well.
And I will admit right up front, for someone that I had never heard of, she was amazing. For both being so young, which we know doesn't really factor in anymore, but also just the embrace that she did in taking on the role itself. She was just awesome. I saw this one in the theater when it came out. I loved it then, and as always, a little trepidatious going back, being like, is it gonna hold up? To me, it did not hold up as well reviewing it now as it did the first time I saw it. That's a me thing. But I still really did enjoy this overall. Those are my quick initial thoughts.
I always worry when we do this on a podcast when we fully agree that it's not going to be interesting conversation, because same exact situation is I saw it in the theater, I liked it, I was a little bit worried, I liked it again, I didn't love it. I think that there's some pieces in there that needed a little bit of work. The Cate Blanchett performance, though, is what made this an over-the-top fantastic movie. It pulled, I feel like the movie pulled together a beautiful main performance, a lot of complicated story with a lot of side characters that they made easy for the audience to understand.
Yeah, they were a bit tropey.
Exactly. I'm a little bit, I know a lot about this time in England, and I think you do too. You're a pretty good, history buff about this time in England, so I know maybe more than the average viewer, but it was so easy to understand. You didn't have a barrier to entry in this movie.
No, you really didn't. And you're right. I think that this does. I mean, it's the title of the movie, so the movie either stands on its merits because of her.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of movies where the main character is not all that great, but the supporting cast elevate them.
Yep.
In this case, I think it's the reverse. She elevated the supporting cast because of her performance. I think also there's something that mini rant here. When you see a movie for the first time and you have no idea what to expect or anything, you haven't been told anything about it, you just go in cold. You are more open to what the movie is offering you than if you go and see it a second, third, fourth, or fifth time, because the parts that you've seen before, you know how it's working, so you start to pick more apart, like the narrative structure of things.
I agree with that, yes.
And I think this movie does suffer from repeat viewings. I still think it's a good movie.
Yep.
Borderline great, but it is not the amazing movie that I thought it was. Because I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater 25 years ago.
I may have seen it once in the meantime, but still not very many times. I agree with everything you're saying. I really liked her performance and how her strength grew from, a very, kind of dancing with no cares young girl in the meadow, literally, to the virgin queen on the throne. And it made that transformation. You saw how it happened.
Yes.
It was a slow transformation, but every event that happened to her, you kind of saw what it did to her, and her performance was great. The other thing is, I really liked the chemistry between her and Joseph Fiennes. I thought that they had a good chemistry.
I thought they had a good chemistry. I don't think they had a great chemistry. So let's talk about her transformation. To me, it was well explored, but I also think that her transformation was a bit sudden.
Like at the very end when she hits the throne.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think where she grew with power and strength, I thought that transformation was very good.
They did a good job of putting her into positions of power and showing how she was able to grow comfortable with those. The first time she's ever sitting with everybody, she's very uncomfortable. She doesn't know what to say. The men just talk right past her.
Yeah.
And then she has the scene in front of the cardinals where you see her practicing her lines before she goes in.
Yep.
So she's trying to find her avenue and her own kind of place of comfort to speak. And in that scene, you see her get more confident being with them. She had something in mind that she wanted to say. She had a tactic. It took her a while to get there, but she eventually got there. So I enjoyed those scenes of her becoming more comfortable, but the transformation was pretty abrupt.
Well, and going back to that scene, but I think why I bought it maybe a little bit more than you did is the scene that you're talking about is she practiced her speech she went and delivered that speech that she practiced, and when they pushed back on her, she pushed back on them.
Correct.
And
Yep.
you saw her kind of grow in the moment
Yep.
of, I'm going from this just words on a page to we are now bantering back and forth, and I am winning this conversation. So I felt that her strength did show in those moments. I think, yes, where she decided to be, I'm going to be the queen, I am married to England, I shall have no men and no heirs. That happened quite abruptly, but all throughout she was questioning, why do I have to get married? Why do I have to get married?
She was.
So I felt like I was okay with it.
Okay, one of the things, and I didn't pick up on it the first time, but I probably did this time because we've watched it twice now for the year and one of your favorites. Towards the end, when all of her enemies get killed,
Yep.
it has a very Godfather feel to it, right? Like even the cutting of the scenes, everything it felt very much like the end of Godfather 1 where everybody just dies.
So interesting. I think you're right. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but I think you're right. The interesting part of that was one of my little nitpicks, is where was the backing for this coup?
Yeah.
Where, I guess it wasn't a
supporting
coup if she's, it's actually like breaking apart the coup. But who is supporting her? Obviously, Jeffrey Rush. But other than that, you don't see a lot of her supporters throughout the course of the movie. So who is helping to carry out all of these killings of the people who are going to take over the country?
Yep.
That I don't understand. It seems like it's her and Jeffrey Rush against the world. And I wanted to see some other supporters.
Yeah, I think it would have been good to have either, I don't know, like a count, or even like the captain of the guard being in her corner, so that she could say, okay, and then so we knew the captain of the guard carried out all of this. So I agree. Something, just a couple quick scenes here and there to show that she had a little bit more following, because the movie sets it up like she's got nobody except for Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So how could she continue?
Exactly. And you know what? I'm going to go back to your Godfather theory because I really like that theory. And also, let's think about the setup, which in The Godfather, Michael is never supposed to be the head of the family. It's always supposed to be Sonny. And in this situation, her sister is supposed to, be the queen and have heirs and have it go through that line. Elizabeth is never supposed to take over the country. So yeah, it's these people who are thrust into a position of power that have to get rid of their enemies in order to maintain that power. I like that.
So for those that have not seen it, a little bit of backstory for this time period. You had the Catholics and Protestants. Catholics were the ones that were in power worldwide, and Protestants were considered a heretical sect of Catholicism, and they frequently went to war. One of the movies that almost made my top 20, Queen Margot, the French film I told you about, is 100% all about this. And it's a French queen coming into her power during this same time period. So that in the background, with the Catholics having such power, very early on, Elizabeth is established as a Protestant. You're right, her sister, who falls ill and basically was kind of a little psychotic. She had some sort of psychosis going on.
Was she? I thought it was just the cancer was eating away at her.
I don't know, some of those early scenes where she's like, she goes from very, very calm to suddenly screaming and things. I think there was something going on there. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But, so she is, not only is it just a woman coming to power, but it's also a Protestant woman. So there's another level of, we don't want this to happen.
And lots of people don't think that her mother was actually married to Henry VIII. So you've got the whole Henry VIII of it all.
Yeah, her mother was Anne Boleyn?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that did confuse me, Henry VIII was the one to establish the Church of England. He basically said, we're not going to be we'll be Catholics, but we're going to be my version of Catholic.
Well, it's just because Catholics don't allow divorce.
Correct. That's the whole reason why.
That's the whole reason he's like, so we're going to be kind of this because I'm going to create something that allows divorce.
Correct. So they were still Catholics with this one very big caveat. Yes. But during this movie, the cardinals are there, and this is what I don't know. Was there a movement to go back under 100% the wing of the Pope and not maintain the Church of England?
Her sister Mary was Catholic, and so when she was in charge, England was Catholic again.
Okay, so divorce was out. Church of England
was out. Church of England was out.
Okay, that's what I didn't know.
Yep. So when Henry VIII died and Mary became the queen, Catholicism comes back because she was the daughter of his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, who everyone believed to be the true wife of Henry VIII,
Okay,
and was
yep.
a devout Catholic from Spain.
Okay. Some specifics about the film. I look at this movie as more of a political movie with a romance, as opposed to a romance movie set in politics.
Oh, I agree completely. Yeah, there happens to be a romance, but it is a minor part of the story.
Yeah, some people have referred to it as a romance. That's why I just wanted, and I know you're much more of an expert on this than I am, so that was my takeaway.
Yeah, no, I think that it has a romance as a side part of the story.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bring up something that I think you're going to 100% disagree with me on.
Hold on one second. Hey! Okay, go ahead.
I think Joseph is miscast in this role.
Really? I disagree with you.
I
Okay.
do. I think when the seduction, the romance part of it, I think he does very well. The political parts of it and the angsty parts of it, I don't think he's up to the level that's necessary for this particular role. Like, so half of his performance, I
Do you
think,
think
is
he's just a
fantastic.
bad actor?
I don't think he's a great actor.
Okay.
And I think with the people he was acting with, Jeffrey Rush, Richard Attenborough.
He didn't have their caliber.
It's like when you were pointing out in Pulp Fiction, the
Oh, yeah.
Tarantino in the same scene as two very prominent actors who were nailing it. Every time he was on, he took me out of it a little bit because I don't
Okay.
think his caliber was up there. When he was one-on-one with the Queen and they were doing lovey-dovey stuff, he was great.
Okay.
Anytime he had to be in scenes with other people, I just don't think he was at that particular level.
That's fair. That's fair.
And we're going to revisit this when we get to
We're
Shakespeare.
very much going to revisit this because I think he had way more chemistry with Kate Blanchett than he did with Gwyneth Paltrow. So we'll have a conversation about that. And so maybe I was giving him more of a pass in this movie because I thought he had better chemistry. And I wasn't really looking at his other parts of the performance. So it's an interesting thing to go back and look at.
That's my takeaway from it. I don't really have a lot with this. They do, all good religious tales end up being, in some form or another, also very highly sexualized, which this one was 100% as well.
yeah.
Like the suppression, it gets shown in various areas. All that was here. I did like Christopher Eccleston. He made a choice. He stuck
great.
with it, and he was a constant throughout. There were not a lot of highs and lows for his characters. It was basically like, this is who I am devout, I believe this, and
Yes.
he did all the way up until his death. So I thought he was a very good supporting person.
I agree, and it had nothing to do with her gender, it was about her religion.
Yes.
Because he fully supported Mary.
Yeah.
It was absolutely about his religion, and I did definitely like that. And it was just very interesting how she believed she could be a leader or she could be a wife and mother of an heir, and she could not do both.
Yes.
And she made her choice.
In times being very different at that point. Yeah, she made a choice. I could be this or I could be this. I'm going with this.
Yep.
And it worked out very well for the country because she
It definitely
turned out to
did.
be a very good leader for England for a very long period of time.
Spoiler alert, the sequel is called Elizabeth the Golden Age. So there you go. But I would kind of mark it as a very enjoyable movie, very well executed, excellent main performance, but not something I feel like I need to revisit again.
No, and I was slightly disappointed by that because I remember enjoying it so much. This was stepping out of my pretentious 20s at this point, almost
right.
into my.
I would think this would be part of the pretentious 20s.
It was. I was still in my 20s, but I was in my late 20s.
Okay,
So I was
alright.
no longer a child.
Got it. Okay. I am with you. But I did think, it does make me want to go watch Elizabeth the Golden Age, though. How about you?
No, because I remember Elizabeth the Golden Age. Not the first time I saw it when it came out, I was excited because I liked the first one, and it was not nearly as good.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That's what I remember anyway.
All right. Spoiler alert. I think I have to go back and see it.
Okay. I think it's free on YouTube Movies right now.
Yes. Yep. I saw that.
So overall, it was fine. I get with a lot of the other films that year why it was nominated.
Oh, absolutely.
But
It's a clear Oscar movie.
Yeah.
Period drama,
and
costume drama.
even though it is historically inaccurate, it does set you in that world, and you do feel like you are in a different time. The costuming, the sets, everything was pretty immaculate to say this is a different time period that we're trying to represent.
Yes.
So for all that, I give it full on props.
Totally great.
I'm ready to move on, and I'm assuming we're going Shakespeare.
I would like to go to Shakespeare in Love. I think it's a really nice kind of contrast.
Absolutely. Shakespeare in Love, directed by John Madden, written by Mark Norman and Tom Stoppard, whom I love, and we're going to get to it in a little bit. Produced by Harvey Weinstein, stars Gwyneth Paltrow, Joseph Fiennes again, Jeffrey Rush again, Colin Firth, Ben Affleck, and Judi Dench, now Dame Judi Dench. Was nominated for a ton of stuff. The Academy loved this movie. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Makeup, Best Original Musical, and then Best Sound. It won for Musical, Costume Design, Art Direction, Screenplay, Best Supporting for Judi Dench, Best Actress for Gwyneth Paltrow, and it did win Picture of the Year, which was hugely controversial even then.
Yes. So for my fun facts, I have a placeholder for the Academy Awards and the Miramax overview, which I think we'll get into in the conversation.
Sure.
So there's lots of fun Academy Awards facts. We're holding those. So two interesting, just kind of casting fun facts is, so Jim Carter, who is Carson the Butler on Downton Abbey, who I adore.
Okay, yeah.
So he played, as men played women parts, he played the nurse in the play Romeo and Juliet.
Yep.
Imelda Staunton played Gwyneth Paltrow's nurse. And she was obviously the character for which the Romeo and Juliet nurse was based on. They're married in real life.
Aww.
So I think that's just adorable that they're both in the movie. I don't know if that's how they met or not. They're still married, and they're basically playing the same part, just one in real life and one on the stage.
Yeah.
And then the other interesting part was the two women who played Judi Dench's courtiers in Shakespeare in Love also played her courtiers in the movie Mrs. Brown the year before.
Oh, yeah.
When Judi Dench played Queen Victoria.
Yep.
So Judi Dench plays a queen. Apparently these two women just come with her. So I just found that interesting.
Quick side thing, have you ever seen Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
It's so adorable.
It's a great movie. It really, really is. But yeah. Oh, and the summary. The world's greatest ever playwright, William Shakespeare, is young, out of ideas, and short of cash, but meets his ideal woman and is inspired to write one of his most famous plays.
Okay, I like that. That
Okay.
works. So this one has quite the interesting opening. Not necessarily something you would expect dealing with Shakespeare, but absolutely something you would expect from a Tom Stoppard, something he would write.
Right.
So there's an interesting juxtaposition there. I do love that Tom wrote this, and I know I've read enough of his stuff that I can almost kind of visualize his just going, well, what if, and then running with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The story itself, I have no issues or problems with in this. I think it's a very well-told story. It's funny. It's also very dramatic. There's a lot of tense moment. People grow, people change, they learn things. Like, there's a lot that happens in this movie.
We laughed, we cried.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens here.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a fan.
Okay, so I don't care for this movie either. I think it has a lot of bright spots to it. I think it is an incredibly clever premise. I think the language, and probably that's what Tom, added, is the language and the dialogue, and all of that is very clever. I don't think this movie knows what it's supposed to be. It doesn't know what genre it is. I watched the trailer for it, and the trailer is a straight-up comedy.
Yep.
It is billing a laugh out loud, wink at the audience, funny comedy. And that's not what this movie is. I mean, it's super funny, but it is a romance, and it is a tragedy, and it is a drama, and it is all of these things with some super funny lines, but it doesn't do any of it well. Or it doesn't finalize any of it, maybe.
My understanding is that the draft that Tom had submitted when they greenlit it was different than what the original or the movie ends up being. So I think I don't know really what this movie is supposed to be. It doesn't fully latch on to everything.
It was clearer at the beginning when it was first drafted.
Yeah, and so I lay that at the feet of the director.
I think that's fair. I think if they had leaned into the comedy more than they did, I think it would have been a better film. I think if they had leaned into the drama more than they did, it would have been a better film. There's one line, and they show it in the trailer, is when Shakespeare says, or one of them says, "The show must," and Shakespeare goes, "Go on." And that's very funny and very clever and great wordplay, and there were moments of that in here, but they didn't belong in a straight up drama.
Yep.
And I think that's what this tried to be.
One of my biggest problems with this is that very early on, it's established that Shakespeare is married.
Yes.
And we just all accept throughout this entire movie that he is 100% being an adulterer throughout this entire thing.
Yes.
And everybody is completely okay with that. And the audiences who flocked to see this movie and recommended it were apparently also okay with that.
By the way, and this is why I wanted to talk about both movies, the character that Joseph Fiennes played in Elizabeth, also married and having an affair with Elizabeth.
Yeah.
It was kind of the same story almost.
Yeah. I will say, as we're doing comparisons, I think that in this movie, Joseph does a better version of leaning into who his character was.
Okay.
I'm not saying he did a better job acting, but leaning into who the character was, I got a better sense of a performance from him in this movie than I did in the previous movie.
I think that's the writing. I think he had more to work with in this movie, and I think
agree.
he did the best he could in the prior movie, but the prior, like Elizabeth was about Elizabeth,
Yeah.
and I think Dudley just did not have a strong role. So I think he could do better because he had more to work with.
And that is most likely entirely 100%
but he
true.
did do better.
But looking at the two performances, that's all we really have to go on. So that's
Yeah.
all I'm saying is that I think he leaned in more to this one. He embraced this one fuller. I do agree with you. I suspect that it was because of the writing. He had more to work with.
Yeah.
But out of the two, I'd give him this one any day over the other.
Yeah. And I would actually like to publicly apologize to Ben Affleck because I gave him crap in Good Will Hunting because I didn't think his performance was very good. I loved him in this movie.
Okay.
I thought he did a really funny, nice job with the character that he had. So, and I'm not a huge Ben Affleck fan, and I thought he was great in this movie.
I think he did a fine job. Again, I think he leaned into the character.
Mhm.
He was just a little bit too stoic. That's not the right word, but a little too. Everybody else was very relaxed and kind of flowing around, and he was this. Like he was,
Yeah.
like
But he
pumped up
was
and
supposed to be. I think that's
Yeah.
what the character was supposed to be.
okay. I can see
Yeah.
that, but he stood out to me because his stance and his interpretation of the character was so vastly different. Even as he's like saying one-liners, trying to be funny, they just fell a little flatter because of the stance, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to put into words. Out
Well,
of
you
all
did
the
fine.
actors in this one, I think he was the weakest. But I think also his character didn't have a lot. So
No.
he just like, I'm just going to be Mr. Stoicism, who occasionally cracks a joke.
This is true. What did you think about Gwyneth Paltrow?
That one's tricky for me to answer. I have never been a Gwyneth Paltrow fan. I always thought she was a very overrated actress. I don't think she's horrible or bad. I just don't think she's that good. And in this role, there were moments where I thought she was very, very, very good, almost borderline brilliant. But throughout most of it, I was just like, okay, someone else come on the screen, please.
I thought she was good when she was playing a man.
Yes.
On the screen. Like,
Yes.
I thought she did a great job as the male role.
Yes.
And then when it was just her, it was basically like the director said, okay, just stand there and look ravishing and look lovely and look beautiful and look innocent. And she's all the same. She's one of the most beautiful women, especially at this time frame. I think she's just lovely, but she didn't do much with that. It's just like her role was, okay, look lovely now. She acted when she was acting as a man on the stage.
I'll give you that, and that's one of the things that I was going to point out is those were the moments I was referring to, is when she was actually dressed as a man.
Okay, all right.
That was when
So we're
she
thinking the
was
same
doing
thing.
a good job, when it was just her with her blonde hair,
Yeah,
being enraptured by words. Like
Yeah.
that did not work for me.
yeah.
I did like the fact that was brought in, and again, this goes back to the writing, the importance of words, that words matter, that words can change things, that you can fall in love with someone based on their words.
Yes, yeah.
I love that this was a very language-focused film. Again, just struggling
Yeah.
not knowing exactly what it was supposed to do.
Yeah. So the great love of her life was married to somebody else. She was engaged and promised to somebody else.
Yes.
And that just didn't matter to anybody.
I liked also the fact that plays, they were putting you in a time period where plays were commerce.
Yep.
And they need money to be able to put on the play, and Shakespeare's in debt to everybody.
Yep.
And the financial backer of this one initially comes across as basically a loan shark who's going to break your legs because you owe me some money. And by the end, he is fully invested.
Yes.
He loves this play. He's even in the play, worried about his
Yes.
lines. That quick story arc, I absolutely loved. I thought it was
Yeah.
one of the most clever and probably strongest little mini story arcs of the whole thing.
And again, that actor who we had just, we had just seen, I absolutely loved him. And Jeffrey Rush, I will say too, we in quick succession have seen him in Shine, we've seen him in Elizabeth, and we've seen him in Shakespeare in Love. Fully different characters in every single one, and in each one, he is fully embracing the character. Like, I thought he was wonderful in this, and I thought he was wonderful in Elizabeth, and both of them were so different.
They were both so different. One is much more of a dramatic role. This one was much more of a comedic role, and he did fully embody both of them. So I agree with you. Like within a 3-year time period, the depth that we saw from him, and then sadly he just kind of disappears a couple of years down the road. I don't know.
He's back this year with a really good horror movie with John Lithgow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so check it out.
Interesting.
Yep, check it out. It's really, really good. Do you like horror? Oh, you don't like horror. That's right. It's still really, really good. At the beginning, you kind of said, there's a lot in this. They learn, they grow. What was the point of this? That's the thing that bothers me a little bit is again, kind of a good movie is the visuals of it, the characters of it, the story, which I think is really, it's a well-written dialogue, but what's the story? Where do we learn? Where do we grow?
It's two things.
Okay.
One, it's Tom Stoppard going, what if, and then writing that.
It's super clever.
And then two, it's the movie to me feels like an entire setup just to get to the end for Elizabeth's speech.
Yeah.
It seems like this is it, and you just have a lot of things happening to kind of ground you to get to the importance of that speech and what she did for the arts during that time.
Yep.
That I think is the point, for lack of a better term. The movie I don't think really necessarily has a point. It's not trying to illustrate something. It is a what if, and look what Elizabeth did.
Okay, I can buy that. That said, I love Dame Judi Dench. I love her, love her, love her. I don't think she deserved the Best Supporting Actress for this role.
No,
she wasn't in it long enough. She had one speech, and then she was briefly in the movie a couple of other times.
Yep.
It gets to the whole Miramax and the promotion they put behind this movie that got them, especially those 3 Oscars, the big ones for picture and actress and Best Supporting Actress. I just don't think any of them are deserved.
I don't think any of them deserve.
Spoiler
I
alert.
certainly do not believe that it should have won Best Picture. We'll get at the end to which one does. Even at the time, it was very controversial. Like that evening, and then all the following week, the backlash.
It was the conversation,
And I think that was a deserved conversation. When you're up against these 5 movies, which are very different movies all throughout, to pick the one that had the most feel-good moments to it, that I think it didn't hold up in the same way as the others did, as far as all of the elements of a movie coming together, which is what Best Picture should be.
Yep.
This one did not have all of that, and so I think it deserved the backlash that it got.
I completely agree with that. It was, when it came out, I enjoyed it. I didn't like it. I didn't love it. I'm glad that I saw it, and that's pretty much it. I didn't look forward to, I will say up front, I did not look forward to revisiting any of these.
I didn't either, and the only reason is because 4 months ago I had watched Saving Private Ryan again. Otherwise, I do look forward to seeing that. Like every couple of years, putting it on. I enjoy revisiting that. But I had seen it so recently that I was like, okay, I'm going to watch it again because I'm sure there'll be things that I'll pick up on that I need to make notes for. But I had just watched it.
Okay, got it. All
right, shall we move on to the 3 WWII war movies?
Let's do it. We can go back to alphabetical if you want.
Okay, so Life is Beautiful. Directed and starring Roberto Benigni, who co-wrote the film with Vincenzo Cerami. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Stars Roberto, his wife, Nicoletta Braschi, Giorgio Cardarini. I don't know why I struggle with Italian names so much.
I say just go full on Italian with it.
Just
Cardarini.
Go full on racist.
And I apologize. Yes, that was terrible.
All right, it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Original Screenplay, Best Foreign Language Film, Best Film Editing, Best Music. It won for score, for Best Foreign Language Film, which I did find interesting. It was nominated for both Best Foreign Language and Best Picture.
That's very rare. It's happened a couple of times, but it's very rare.
And then Roberto did win for Best Actor, which I watched this then. And,
Roberto! Yeah. Can see Sophia Loren doing it, yeah.
And his walking to it, he didn't just walk up the aisle like everybody. He was crawling over people and seats with the biggest grin. It was very cute.
Mm-hmm.
All right, go with some facts.
All right, so some facts are that, and I think you said it, was that the two main leads are actually married in real life, and they are still married to this day, which is lovely. Benigni's father was actually in a concentration camp for 2 years. Although his family is not Jewish, it had something to do with his father's, where he was in the Italian army and actually was in favor of the Allies. Yep. So that's why he was sent to the concentration camp. The little boy, who I found adorable, later played Maximus's son in the movie Gladiator in a couple of years.
Okay.
So we'll see him again. But then he went back to Italian cinema, still acting constantly, but only in Italian cinema. I couldn't find there's maybe another American credit out there, but I couldn't find it. But that year he did win the Jackie Coogan Award for Young Hollywood Performer.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, so I love that. And the summary is, when an open-minded Jewish waiter and his son becomes victims of the Holocaust, he uses a perfect mixture of will, humor, and imagination to protect his son from the dangers around their camp.
Not laughing at her description. All right, I'll buy that.
Okay.
So, before we dive into this, this was probably the movie that I was the most worried about revisiting.
Okay.
And I need to tell you a story before I explain why. When this movie came out, I had a very good friend. I was living in Seattle, I had a very good friend. We used to go to the movies together a lot. Mm-hmm. So I'd heard of this one, and I asked her, hey, do you want to go see this movie? It's in Italian, do you mind subtitles? She's like, no. So we went and saw it. After the movie ended, when we walked out, and it was a small little theater, I looked at her and I was like, hey, can we just like walk for 10 or 15 minutes? And no offense, but the movie's kind of stuck in my head. I just need to walk and let it process. We'll go find a place, sit down, have a drink, and then we can talk about it. But I'm just going to need a little bit of time. She's like, no, I'm in the exact same place. So the movie stuck in my head, and I have not revisited it purposefully because of that moment is very dear and very precious to me. Okay. So in my life, I was never going to revisit this, and I knew it was one of the first thoughts that I had when we decided to do this podcast. I was like, oh, I'm going to have to go and rewatch that movie again. Interesting, okay. So, that said, unfortunately, it did not live up to the memory. Your memory, okay. Which I remember, which I knew was going to happen, which is why I wanted to keep it pure. Okay. I apologize for this experience. It's nobody's fault. But it was one of those things, like every once in a while in life, due to art, you have a moment that cements itself for you, becomes part of you, helps impact things, but it's just a memory, and it's an important one that you cherish and try to keep alive. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to destroy that. And I almost said to you, I'm not going to watch it, and I will talk about my memory of it, but I'm not going to rewatch it. And I didn't. And I watched it again. I would have allowed it. You can take a mulligan on it. So we had almost exactly the opposite experience, because I remember I went to go see it in the theater, and I was seeing it with friends who had seen it like 2 and 3 times before, and they hyped it up, and this is the best movie they've ever seen, and so I went to see it, and I didn't love it. And I think I just didn't love it because I didn't love it as much as I was expecting to love it. Yep. And so I was a little, again, I wasn't looking forward to rewatching any of these movies, but I liked it much better this time. And I think just because I wasn't expecting to love it as much. I think part of it is, though, there are 2 parts of this movie. Yes, there are 2 very distinct parts. I like the second part of the movie, even though it is harder to watch than I did the first part of the movie, and we can get to why. But once we got into the second part of the movie, I'm like, all right, this is much more interesting than I thought it was the first time around. You're absolutely correct. It is 2 different movies, and I'll briefly describe what each of them is. The second part is what I remembered the movie to be. Okay, which is better, I think, than the first part. So the first part is we get introduced to the characters, we get introduced to his falling in love with his future wife, and all of the hijinks that he does, like the perfect date, we'll get to that.
Yep.
All of the different things for them to fall in love and then eventually have a child. Well, subtly in the background, you see the rise of fascism happening as this is all being played out. That's the first hour of the movie. And then the second is when they are being sent to the concentration camp. They arrive at the concentration camp. Father and son are with the men, and father, rather than explain to his son what is really happening, decides to do the best he can and make it all a game, that they're playing this massively long game. That is the second part of the movie, where he's hiding all of the horror that is going on in this.
Yeah.
And like I said, the second part was the part that I remembered. When I walked out of the theater, I was of the impression of the love that someone would have to set aside what they're going through and be able to invent this massive world and game for their son to protect them from this harmful memory if they survive.
He created magic for his son in order to protect him. Exactly.
And he did, to a certain degree, he definitely, I mean, that was part of his personality. We do see that get set up in the first one. He did it with when he was courting his wife and trying to convince her to be with him instead. So we see that is something inherent in him, that he likes to give magic and mystery to people.
Yes.
But the length, the breadth and scope and depth of what he had to do in the second part is just amazing to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think let's maybe start with the first part where we just kind of meet Guido, meet Dora, and see how their romance unfolds. He was a little over the top and too high energy for me at the beginning. It was just, he was all over the place. It was a little too frenzied for me to actually understand who is this person and why should I connect with him. But later, and it was that perfect date, that's where his charm comes out. And that's where he wins over Dora, and he won over me, and I think he wins over most of the audience. Basically, he knew when something was going to happen and kind of went to her of, boy, I wish this would happen. And then suddenly it happens. Like, he knows that he stole this guy's hat. And he's like, oh, I wish I had a dry hat. And the guy whose hat he stole comes over and grabs his hat and gives him the dry one. And Dora is just mesmerized by him. And it's very sweet and very charming. But before you get to that moment, he is too wild and too frenzied and too high energy.
I agree. He is over the top. And for that first hour, the first 40 minutes of that hour are all set up for the date to go so well. Every scene that he is in does pay off or come back in that last moment. So it's a long setup, and it does work. It's just a long time of him being very almost aggressively over the top to have this one particular moment work.
Yes.
So it's a long journey to get to a 5-minute scene of the movie.
Nope.
That's a little much for me. That's one of the things that I had completely forgotten about with this movie.
Yeah.
I wish I still could.
Well, and I think that you see him again because I wasn't quite as charmed by him winning the Best Actor, of climbing over the chairs and all that. To me, that was the early Guido coming back, and it was a performance, and it was performative.
Yes.
It wasn't in the genuine moment. It wasn't genuine, exactly. It wasn't authentic. So that I didn't love as much. But the second half of it, it's an incredibly clever premise. It is incredibly well executed. The thing that bothers me a little bit about it is, it's a pretty sanitized version of the Holocaust.
Yep.
It really is.
I
And that's
100% agree.
troubling. But the way that he plays it off, and again, if you focus on the love of his child, you can get past it.
So that's a common criticism that this movie gets, and I don't disagree with that as a criticism. The fact that they are in a concentration camp, which now we all know what the atrocities that are happening in that, and you don't see any of that. Nobody dies during this movie that I can remember.
I think a few people don't come back to the barracks, but you never see death.
Right.
Yeah.
It's never put up. It's not like Schindler's List accurate.
Exactly.
And I think my argument against that as a criticism is if you were to display that, this movie is all kind of like a fable.
Yes.
It is not necessarily supposed to be rooted in the real reality, if that makes sense. So if you were to show some of the horrific things, if you were to heighten their being in a concentration camp and what that truly meant, I think it would take away from that second part of his being able to disguise it and make a game for his son. That would not work as well.
Not only do I agree with you, but Roger Ebert agrees with you.
Oh, really?
So I pulled a quote from him, which is very much what you were saying, because again, that bothers me a little bit, but I got past it with this. So what he said in his review of the movie is, "Life is Beautiful is not about Nazis and fascists, but about the human spirit. It is about rescuing whatever is good and hopeful from the wreckage of dreams." And I really like that. So I
just like
agree with
Roger
you.
Ebert. I'm glad he agrees with me.
He does. He must have heard you talking about it and agrees. But no, I think you both agree that, you know, it is beyond the Holocaust. That is a setting.
Yeah.
And it is about love, human spirit, seeing the good in the good in every situation. One moment in that whole situation is when I think Roberto Benigni won the Best Actor for me, which is there's been this doctor character throughout the throughout the story.
They're doing riddles.
Right, they do riddles, word puzzles, and in the beginning part of it, they're friends, and now he is a Nazi doctor.
Yes.
And Guido is in the concentration camp, and there's a moment where he's being called over by the doctor. He thinks he's getting out. He thinks this person is going to save him. And instead, he just wants to play a riddle with him. And you can literally see the light go out of his eyes.
Yeah,
And you can
I remember
see
that, yeah.
the hope drain from his face for the very first time. Everything else is heightened, like happy, we're gonna be happy. And you just see it drain from his face. And that to me is the moment that I'm like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. It was amazing, and it was so sad.
And then it should be acknowledged also later on that the doctor does end up helping him get through some difficult times. Does try to, I think at
Does
one point. Yeah, at one point he.
Well, he makes him a waiter instead of like carrying anvils.
And doesn't he do something for his wife? I thought I remembered him doing something like he was trying to find his wife to let him know that his wife was still alive and okay. And I thought there was.
It could be. I didn't catch it.
Okay.
It could be. I thought what happened was he wasn't a good guy, but I might have missed that.
That's really all I have to say is that the second half is the part that I'm going to now fully cement in my memory because
And
that
remember
is
that.
just so incredibly well done and very hopeful. It's
It's
really
beautiful.
hopeful.
It is. We'll cut that out.
Saving Private Ryan?
Saving Private Ryan.
All right, Saving Private Ryan, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Robert Rodat, stars Tom Hanks, Edward Burns, Tom Sizemore, Jeremy Davis, Vin Diesel, Adam Goldberg, Barry Pepper, Giovanni Ribisi, Matt Damon, and this movie might even set the record for the number of recognizable faces that are in it for just small periods of time.
I think the Thin Red Line does. I think we're gonna have. A tie.
Yeah, no, you might be right.
It's close. It is very, very
It
close.
is very, very, very close. You're right.
Mhm.
Anyway, so there's a ton of people that are in this for moments. It won for Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, Best Sound Effects Editing, and it was nominated for Best Actor for Hanks, Best Original Screenplay, Best Music, John Williams, Best Production Design, and Best Makeup. It did not win for any of those. Go with some Hanks.
All right, so my favorite fun fact is, as everybody knows, one of my favorite movies is The Fighting Sullivans,
Yes.
which was number 20 on my list. And there's a throwaway line in this movie saying that the brothers Ryan were in the same unit, but they were separated after we lost the Sullivan brothers on the Juno. So there's a call back to The Fighting Sullivans. And then the other piece, honestly, there's a ton of lore that you could have gone into.
Yeah.
So I went again with the dialogue and the script, which is the Tom Hanks at the part when he talked about himself. Like he famously in his unit didn't talk about himself, where he was from, what he did.
If there was a poll going, who is he, where is he from, what did he do in the real world?
Exactly. And so he finally came out that he's a teacher from Pennsylvania. There was a long speech of who he was and what he did and about his wife and all of those things. And Tom Hanks went to Steven Spielberg and he said, no, my character wouldn't say those things. If he doesn't want to talk about himself, he'd say a few things to stop what was going on.
Right.
And so they cut the scene
Nice.
and they cut the script because he was right. And the other piece is, at one point, Matt Damon talks about his brothers and the story about a girl in the barn with his brothers, fully ad-libbed. And
I did not know that.
And the reason they kept it is because Steven Spielberg is like, it was boring and stupid and pointless and exactly the kind of story that a guy would have told about his brothers. So that's why he kept it, was it meandered and didn't go anywhere.
Interesting. Because it does seem a little out of place when,
Yeah.
when he's telling it, but that makes a lot more sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And this is the only one of the 5 movies that we are looking at today that's on the AFI list. It
Okay.
is number 71.
All right. A couple interesting facts for you. I'm sure you might know this. Nathan Fillion has famously talked about the detail that all of the actors, as far as costuming, even the underwear they wore was the underwear that the military wore at that time. They had it redone. And then also, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks are very good friends. More importantly, their wives are best friends.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
So
okay.
the wives were there during the filming of it, and because they're such good friends, Tom had talked about this on Inside the Actor Studio when asked the question, like, how much prep time do you like to give yourself for things? He's like, I like to give myself as much as I can, but often you just don't get that. For example, on Saving Private Ryan, we finished shooting the day like around 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and as I was leaving to go back and kind of decompress, Steven Spielberg said to me, "Oh, and by the way, tomorrow morning I need you to cry," and then walked away. And he's like,
awesome.
"Okay.
That's what we're gonna do then."
All right, I have seen this a bunch. This one is a little hard for me to kind of separate myself out of because I have seen it so many times. It's easy to talk about this for me in like the bigger overall themes of things, which I will get to in a minute, and then the occasional criticism of this rather than talk about like individual aspects or components of it. So I'm going to let you, if you don't mind, dive in first.
Nope, I'd be happy to. So I kind of look at this as well as, I think of it in the, what did I think overall, what are the good things about it, what are the bad things about it. So overall, I really think this is a brilliant movie. I think it has a lot of, it has the big moments and the quiet moments, that it does both of them very, very well.
Yes.
It has an incredibly large cast that you don't spend a lot of time with anybody individually, but each individual character, you know who they are, you know what motivates them, you know what bothers them. I have seen the movie probably 5 or 6 times, so not a ton, but a lot, for this type of movie, because it is an incredibly emotional movie.
Yes.
But it is a movie that I think earns that emotion.
Yes.
And we can talk to, I want to talk to you about the bookends of how we start and end, in Normandy, and what that adds to or doesn't add to the movie. But for me, thematically, one scene I still remember from having watched it the first time when it first came out, which is the guy who could not bring the ammunition up to the other man who was dying. He was dying, he was being killed. Had he brought the ammunition up to him, he might have saved his life, he might not have. But it's 25 years since the first time I saw this movie, and I could right now, even if I'd never seen it again, tell you everything about that scene, everything about that performance, and still think, I wonder how that man lived his life out. Knowing that moment, and knowing that his moment to be a hero, he failed.
He froze.
He froze, he failed, and he's probably 20 years old. So, does he, does that person define his life by that moment and that failure? Or did he go on to live, hopefully, a happy life, and that was a blip in his the rest of his life? Is it something that he buried and, just never ever thinks about it? It makes you think about all of the men who lived these lives, and each of these moments could have defined who they were. I just think it's so thought-provoking.
Yes, I agree. You mentioned a lot of things, so I'm going to tackle them kind of one by one.
Laura blabbered again.
No. It's very. That's not a criticism. Number one, the movie did bring up a lot of it does earn its emotional moments. This is much more of an emotional movie than you would expect from a war movie.
Absolutely.
The characters, if you notice, and I was really paying attention this time through, depending on who's talking, the language changes.
Oh, absolutely.
So you can have like someone talking to the captain and they're talking in this particular fashion. And then you can have two of the soldiers talking to each other. They talk in a very particular way. That one of those same people talks to a different soldier, but it's a different set of
Yes.
language that they actually use.
That hierarchy means something.
Yes. That is a testament to the writing to be able to do that in that detail.
Yep.
But what it does is it allows, even though you only get to see the characters, not each character doesn't have like massively big scenes. They have small scenes here and there. They are very well defined, but they become a unit, and that unit gives you the emotional beats and moments and tells the story. They all build on each other to tell that story, and that's a testament to the writing, that the characters are strong, but none of them individually is telling the story. They are collectively telling the story. That's just a testament to the writing.
Nope, I totally agree.
The book ending, I don't like.
Interesting.
I don't like it because it's deceptive.
It's dishonest. Yeah.
It is dishonest. I don't know how else you would do it. I like the ending, the earn this, and then he's questioning, did I do a good job? I like that. I don't like them starting out that particular way, and then you focus on the eye. So the entire movie, you're thinking the person in the beginning is one person, and then it's a bait and switch at the end.
Yes.
I don't like that. I don't know how else you would do it, but I don't like that.
I do.
Switch. Oh,
I
okay.
know how else you do it. You don't have the beginning moment, and you just have the end. Because at the beginning, you just start on Omaha Beach is how I think the movie has to start. And then at the end, you can be through Matt Damon and Private Ryan's eyes in that moment of, did I earn this? But I don't think you need the beginning piece of it. And I think it's dishonest because you think it's Tom Hanks.
Yep.
And then the rest of the movie, you think you are seeing through somebody's eyes. Ryan, who is the person we're supposed to be seeing this through, has no knowledge of any of those experiences.
Correct.
So I think you just absolutely cut that out. You start on Omaha Beach and you are in it bang.
Okay, yes, you solved the problem. Take out the first part and just let the movie go.
Steven Spielberg, however, did not ask me.
No.
No.
But let's talk about the first 25 minutes, the actual invasion of Normandy that they filmed. I didn't catch this because I'm not that technical when it comes to film stock and film quality. But in doing some research after watching it, I was trying to get people's impressions, like technically, of that opening. And over and over again, the people who apparently know a lot more about film stock than I do, they desaturize the opening so that when there's blood, it is not as vivid, it is not as bright.
Okay.
So even though it is very technical and people are dying left and right, and they did that apparently, someone found an interview with Stephen who'd said that they did that specifically because too much blood would take you out of it too quickly.
All right, so that's really interesting. I noticed that the blood was not blood red.
Yes.
So I didn't know how they did it or why they did it or any of those things. But we've talked before about sometimes black and white movies are better for this type of thing. And even though this wasn't black and white, it was very much more sepia tone or something like that. So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The technical term
Makes
is, I guess,
sense.
desaturated.
Okay.
Um,
That makes sense.
But that first 25 minutes or so approximately, are so incredibly brutal, so incredibly well crafted and shot that we talked, certain directors have like an art of violence to them, Coppola being one of them.
Yep, Scorsese.
Yep. In this as well, not in the latter scenes, but definitely in the first 25 minutes, there is a beauty to what is being shown to you as all of this horror is going on. The way it's being displayed, the way that it's shown, the multiple shifting of from the beachhead looking at the invaders being down thrust upon. You get an incredible sense of what it might have been like to be there through how all of that is stitched together.
That's interesting, and I want to talk to you about both of those scenes because there are two major action scenes. I think it's fair to say. And Omaha Beach is the one that everybody talks about because it is brutal and beautiful, and there's silence through a big piece of it, or it's deafened anyway. Like at one point, Tom Hanks gets too near a shell, and it's a little bit deafened. There's no dialogue, and you're seeing utter chaos, absolute chaos, and yet you're seeing this man trying to make order out of chaos and trying to get up to the beachhead, and so it's beautifully done. I don't think the bridge scene gets as much credit as it deserves because it is they're two different war scenes, but they are so very, very different. And, it sounds like the way that they were shot were very different, but I never feel like that gets as much credit as I think it deserves. There's so many things happening in so many different places, and you're there in the moment, and you move with the camera. And I think the bridge scenes are just as good, but not as artistic, perhaps, as the first ones.
So the difference for me in those two scenes is the beginning one is you don't know who anybody is. You don't know who the characters are. By the time you get to the bridge scene, you know who the characters are. And the difference in those battles, not only is it just like rather than frontal assault, it's all infighting in buildings and things like that, but you get to spend moments with each of the characters that you don't in the beginning. In the beginning, it is just, they're just bodies. And
It's
you don't
true.
even really know who people are, even though we know
Tom Hanks,
we know
but
who
that's
Tom
about it.
Hanks are. We keep fixating back on these people.
Sizemore maybe,
But you don't really know them as far in the context of the film quite
Right.
yet. You definitely do by the end, and you spend far more time on them and what they're doing, and in many, many cases their deaths, than you do in the beginning part of it. So I think that's one of the reasons why people don't latch onto it as much, is that's a little bit more uncomfortable because you know them.
Interesting. Okay, I can see that. So in doing research, I'm sure you read this too, is a lot of veterans of this battle said it was pretty realistic for how things really happened. And it's just shocking to watch this and believe anyone survived, honestly.
My experience is not unique. This happened, and multiple people have said this was their experience as well. I was living in Seattle. I went and saw it on a matinee on a Saturday by myself. I was the only person under 60 in the theater. Most of the people that were there were elderly couples. Obviously, the gentleman had gone through World War II with their wives. And in fact, there was an entire row that was just kind of off to my left that all came down, filled up the entire row, and sat there together. And when the credits rolled, I looked over and I was just watching them and seeing the look in the wives and how they were then looking at their husbands.
You did that.
Vastly differently than before. Because, and this has been said multiple times, just like you mentioned, this movie allowed other people to get somewhat close to the feeling of what these people have gone through. And it's amazing you're standing here in front of me.
It is amazing. So kind of bouncing off that, talking about themes of this movie, two kind of jumped out at me, and one of them is, and we can talk about it in a minute, one of them is what is one man's life worth?
Yes.
So I want to put that aside because more relevant to that, what you just said, is ordinary men doing extraordinary things. These were teachers from Pennsylvania who were then leaders because they were leaders. He came to the top because he was a leader of men, not because he was necessarily a military man.
Right.
It was extraordinary acts of courage, extraordinary acts of sacrifice by ordinary men on their, when they came back stateside or when they left. So I went to go see this movie with my dad, who's a Korean War veteran, and he, his uncles mostly served in World War II. And he's like, most of these guys were 18, 19 years old and had never left Portland, Maine. And suddenly they're, thrust into this experience.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
This because it's the same producers, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, very often gets portrayed right along Band of Brothers, which is probably the best miniseries I personally have ever seen. It's just amazing.
It is.
And unjustly, I think sometimes Saving Private Ryan gets more criticism because the Band of Brothers is based on real people doing real things. You have in the beginning of each episode the real people who were there talking about the experience of the episode you're about to watch. This is a fictitious thing that did not actually happen, that was invented to bring you into the world of World War II. And I have seen a lot of criticism of Steven. By making it fictitious, he is actually taking something away from the people who were there. And I fucking disagree with that. I think it's entirely the opposite. By inventing it and not making it specific and having to adhere to whatever happened to an individual or to a group, that he is allowed to bring all of it in and give you a better understanding of what it must have like to just have been in the war. You're not telling a singular story. You're telling the story of the war.
Well, and I would even say that, yes, sure, this movie is a fictionalized account, But you can't tell me that there was not a 19-year-old kid who stayed in a stairwell while his buddy got killed.
Yeah.
There was somebody who did not step up to that act of courage,
Yeah.
and who knows what their life was like. There is somebody else who sacrificed for another man.
Yep.
There is somebody else who, like each of these experiences, the sniper who, ran up to the bell tower and knew what was going to happen to him. That happened to someone, even if we don't know specifically who. Each of these experiences were probably lived by men. We just don't know. We just don't know which men.
Yeah. So I've never bought that as criticism. In
Nope.
fact, I think that kind of criticism is really lazy.
Yeah, I agree.
The movie does bring up a lot of different themes. You mentioned the captain being elevated for not necessarily being a soldier, but just being a leader of men. Mm-hmm. He's also someone who read the field manual.
This is true. He knows what a sticky bomb is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So he took his job very seriously.
Yes.
And he tells you why he's taking it all seriously, and that he doesn't care that they're going to save this guy called Ryan, because it's just one step for him to get closer to home.
Yes.
So is the entire thing worth it? No, it's not worth 9 guys to go save one particular guy. It's a PR stunt, we all understand,
Mm-hmm.
but it's what our mission is, so it's what we're going to do, because it gets us one step closer
Right.
to going home.
And he is doing what he is asked to do for the greater good.
Correct.
Yeah. I do want to also just highlight a couple of what I thought were excellent performances, in a highlight of fantastic performances. Edward Burns and Barry Popper, I thought were really standouts. And why Barry Popper did not become a more well-known actor, I don't know. Because I saw him in a bunch of things around this time, and he was always a standout. And they could have been kind of a little bit more caricatures, because those characters were not jump off the screen like I know everything about them, but they still had so much charisma.
Yeah. My favorite is, and it's probably because of the way the character is set up in the film, is Wade, the doctor.
Yes.
Because he
was great.
He's the empathy throughout the entire film. When you first see him, he's on the beach, bullets whizzing by, he's trying very hard to save as many people as he can. He gets frustrated as he just was working on someone and they get shot in the head. Over and over and over again, he is the one who has the empathy for things.
Yeah.
He's the one that stops them when they have their stress relief of going to the dog tags and making fun of everybody as the company is walking by. He's the one that recognizes, don't do that, that is wrong.
People.
Yes.
These are people you're messing with. And even Tom Hanks, who up to then was the moral center of the company.
Yeah, he's smiling along with everybody.
Yep, exactly.
So it's Wade's character who basically you kind of get the empathy of everything as you're going through. Each character kind of has a role. They're not like a trope, but they kind of fulfill a bit of a role.
Yep.
Edward Burns' character is the one who's constantly questioning why things are being done the way that they are. And through him, we get a lot of the questioning of war and the stupidity of it overall. And Barry Pepper, his role as a sniper, he's very religious. He's like, God gave me a talent, I'm going to utilize my talent, that is why I am here. Each of them have their own little thing, but Wade is my personal favorite because of the empathetic aspect.
No, I can see that. For me, it was these other two guys because of the roles that they played. But I can see that, and I also think Tom Sizemore,
phenomenal. His best role ever, I think.
I totally agree with you. His character was interesting. His acting choices were fantastic, and I know he was going through a difficult time at that time, and he kept it together.
Yep.
So.
Hey. All right. We could go on about Saving Private Ryan forever. I think it is a fantastically well-crafted movie. It is. When we started first talking about Steven Spielberg way back with Close Encounters, I had mentioned that there are certain movies where I think he is just at the top of his game and he reaches a particular pinnacle. This for me is his pinnacle.
Yeah.
Everything after this, he still may come out with a fantastic movie in a couple of years. I don't know. But everything after this doesn't quite reach the level of craftsmanship and bringing me into that movie after this.
I can see that. I also, just thinking back on the question of, is it too sentimental, this movie? Because it does get a little bit of criticism for that, and I think absolutely not. It is, it is just right for the subject matter, for the time. You have to put yourself in the time too.
Yes.
He's telling the story of the greatest generation at the time when everybody was, trying to understand the greatest generation.
Yeah.
And good for him. Great movie.
All right, shall we move on to the last?
Yes.
Okay, so we're probably going to do a lot of comparisons between
I think
these
we
two.
will, yeah.
The last is The Thin Red Line, written and directed by Terrence Malick. It's another WWII film. It's the second film adaptation of the 1962 novel by James Jones. The first was done in '64. This tells a fictionalized version of the Battle of Mount Austin, stars Sean Penn, Jim Caviezel, Nick Nolte, Elias Koteas, Ben Chaplin, co-stars Adrian Brody, George Clooney, John Cusack, Woody Harrelson, Jared Leto, John C. Reilly, and a host of other people. Like you mentioned already, it's kind of a coin flip which one had more like little cameos throughout. This one holds its own with Saving Private Ryan. Go with some facts.
All right, so I had to look up what is the Thin Red Line. It's derived from a Rudyard Kipling poem, Tommy. So that represents the courage and resilience of soldiers in combat.
It also gained notoriety for British soldiers. It was specifically for British soldiers. I
Because
think
they were called Tommies. Yeah. World War I, was that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take away your thunder there.
It's totally okay. And this is actually something we talked about at a prior movie, I think, as well, is Adrian Brody was supposed to be a much more major character.
The
Was
lead.
Demoted when he found out that he was demoted when he was promoting the film. He didn't actually realize that.
At the premiere, I believe.
And still talks about how demoralizing that was. And in addition to him, Mickey Rourke, Bill Pullman, and Lucas Haas were cut from the movie entirely.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
They all did a bunch of voiceovers, they did a bunch of scenes, totally gone.
Speaking of, the original voiceover was supposed to be just one voice, and it was Billy Bob Thornton. He recorded over 8 hours.
I did read that as well.
It was just going to be one, and then it ends up being like 8 or 10 at the end. But and he didn't appear in the movie at all, but that was one of his big first roles. Is he recorded 8 hours of voiceover for this movie.
Yeah, and he's got a very unique voice. You would
does.
know his voice too.
Yeah.
All right, so can I jump in first with my overall thoughts?
Absolutely.
I hate this movie. I hate this movie with all of my heart and soul. So again, this is a movie that I went to see with my dad. My dad and I went to see all the war movies together back in the day. And I remember sitting in the theater thinking, I hope Jim Caviezel dies soon so that I can go home. I hated this movie then. I did not want to rewatch it. I rewatched it. I hated it again. And I know that this is a raging bull opinion because everybody out there believes that this is brilliant, and I know that I am in the minority. I know that it is all my problem and absolutely not for me. It's a masterpiece, but just no.
Okay. I like Terrence Malick films, but I acknowledge that they are very difficult. They are all very slow. They have tons of voiceover. They are more emotionally based rather than like plot or device based. And those kind of movies are difficult for a lot of people. They're difficult for me. I enjoy them. I usually will only watch them once because that's all I need.
Yeah.
It's a fun, enjoyable experience to sit and watch Terrence Malick film. But I've seen all of them, and I've seen all of them only once.
Okay.
This is the only one I've ever revisited because we did this. I do. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for this. I do view this one as more artistic than Saving Private Ryan. Doesn't mean it's a better film, but
I
it
agree.
is far more artistic than Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan is a very linear story. This is a very emotional story. The plot is pretty much irrelevant. They're just moving forward through the jungle. That's it. But it is beautiful.
I don't disagree with you. I think it is a very artistic movie. I think that it sacrifices a story and a plot for its cinematography and for the artistic shots. I mean, there are some gorgeous shots. The island life at the beginning, the water and the children and just the life that is happening around there is absolutely beautiful. The grassy mountains where things are happening, and one of my favorite scenes was the mist just before the Japanese attack.
Yeah.
Like that's some stunning camera work. But again, for me, it was all performative instead of a movie is supposed to, just it be more than pretty camera shots.
Sure. And I totally understand, and I totally get that, and I hold no judgment against that in any way, shape, or form. I just, having seen a lot of those, I know what I'm getting into when I sit down to watch one of his films, so I let so much go.
Yeah.
For me, this film, it's emotional rather than any sort of plot, really.
Yes.
All of the different folks that you have the voiceovers for, all they're doing, they're not commenting on what's happening.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's just inner thoughts that they're having as they're having these experiences, but they are not tied to the experiences that they're having, except emotionally.
Yes.
What just happened does allow someone to let their mind wander to an emotional moment, and they start talking about that. One, after like a particular like minor skirmish battle scene, a lot of people died, he then starts to think about God and his relationship with God. Like, those do tie in and help tell the story, but from an emotional standpoint rather than like the Saving Private Ryan straightforward plot kind of thing. So I was fine with it. Mm-hmm. It is difficult and long.
It is very, very long. I think, so getting back to the voiceover, I think for me again, so basically everything Laura doesn't like in a movie was in this movie. So I don't like voiceover for the most part, and especially pointless voiceover does not make me happy. I am fine with women not being in a movie. I don't think there were any women in Saving Private Ryan, and there shouldn't be, and that makes sense. In this movie, they had
the French mom, but that was it. The French mom when they go into the town and they're
right, okay, and the little girl. I forgot about them. But in this movie, they have no women in the movie except for the Islanders, but they have like the shot of the girlfriend or wife at home who has no lines but is wearing, like a lovely gauzy dress and like dancing around the house with him in his memories and dreams. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And as far as the cast in this, it is such a stacked cast that looked like stunt casting to me. I mean, it looked like the last season of Will and Grace. Like, let's have Madonna and Cher and Barry Manilow. Here's John Travolta. Here's, here comes Clooney. Whereas all of the actors who were in Saving Private Ryan, they had a purpose and they played a character. And you learned even just a moment, you learned a little something about them.
Terrence Malick is an actor's director. People love to work with him. There are some very notorious examples of people who don't, but for the most part, people really love to work with him. And he doesn't make a lot of films. So when the word gets out, hey, he's making a new film, everybody wants to jump on board. And if you were a male actor in Hollywood, whether you were young and hungry or established, when this movie came out, everybody wanted to be in it, and everybody is in it. If they were not in Saving Private Ryan, they're in this movie.
So, what other Terrence Malick movies are there?
The Fountain,
never seen
The Tree of Life.
Never seen it.
And then he had a slew of them before that are all just, I'm blanking. It was 20 years. This was his coming out of retirement after 20 years to come back into film.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I should go back and see if there's any movies of his that I've watched or that I have liked. But and again, it is me, and it is my problem because we've talked about like Raging Bull being a masterpiece, and I don't get it. This one, it just was not for me. It had all of the things in it that I don't like in a movie, and remembering my experience watching it the first time, I was really reluctant to watch it a second time, and it just didn't get better for me.
And like I said, I totally understand that. This is one where I do get the praise, absolutely. And why people call it one of the greatest war films ever invented. I understand where people are coming from. I also get the ones who are like, this just bored me to tears.
See, I do not think this is one of the best war movies ever. I think it is a beautifully shot movie, and artistically, absolutely. But this, I don't know, this to me, it just didn't scream war in the way others do.
It's not supposed to.
Okay.
It's a movie that's set during a war time, but it's ultimately not about a specific war. It's not really about World War II. It's about the processes that people go through and the thoughts and things that you have that you go through while you're there. It's a study.
Okay.
It's a study of war. It's not a war movie.
Okay,
Does
all right,
that make sense?
yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I will, since I pissed on this poor movie, I will say I thought the Sean Penn performance was brilliant, and this is maybe the best I've seen of him since I really liked him in Milk. So this is one of my favorite performances of his. And I also thought Nick Nolte was fantastic in this movie.
Yeah,
he was great.
He's the standout for me because you see him go through such conflict. One of the pivotal things for me, it could have been so much different. His orders get disobeyed by the captain because he knows that if the captain takes his men up, they're all just going to get slaughtered. There's no way they could do what's being asked. So he says no. And Nick Nolte gets very upset by this, but allows it to happen is like, I'm going to come up there and I am going to see what is going on. And when I get there, it better be what you're telling me. Rather than do it like the loud, over the top, you're disobeying my orders, screaming and yelling. He does scream and yell a lot, and then when he gets there and the situation has changed, he then doesn't go into some sort of fit and tirade and rage. He's trying very hard to understand. And his character, and he even says it, like, this is my war. This is my shot.
Yes.
I don't care what has to happen. This is where I'm going to find my glory. And everything he does is based on that. And it's the subtle little choices in his performance that he did that re-enhance all of that, and I think he was by far the best in the entire movie.
Nope, I totally agree. And the interesting part is, and why I wanted to talk about both of these movies together is, the question in Saving Private Ryan is, how much is a man's life worth?
Yep.
And in this one, they ask the same question, except for it's flipped, of how many men are worth this thing we have to do.
Yep.
Like, are you willing to sacrifice 1 of your men, 10 of your men, 100 of your men? Because we got to capture that hill.
Yep.
And some of them are going to die. And so you just need to get comfortable with that. And the guy could not get comfortable with that.
Yep.
Whereas, an entire troop was, being sacrificed pretty much for one man in Saving Private Ryan. And so they're both asking the same question, which is a very good question of war.
I think one of the reasons why people do have problems with this is Thin Red Line asks a lot of questions and posits a lot of ideas, but does not come down on one side or the other on anything.
Yeah.
It is just, think about this, think about this, think about this. It's never trying to steer you in a particular direction, or I don't feel that it is. And it's never trying to give you answers to things.
Right.
It's just throwing a lot of information at you for you to think about. And that's a problem, particularly, and it is a problem in movies because we want the movie to take a stance on something, to take us on a journey so that we can either follow that or be like, nah, I don't like the choice you made there. But movies do that. They take a stance and they give you a path. This one doesn't, and that's why I think a lot of people have issues with it.
I think that's fair. What did you think of Jim Caviezel's performance?
He was fine. He was fine as the quote-unquote lead. He was a little bit more subdued. One of the things that I don't like about this movie is the constant time jumping that it does.
Yeah.
The movie's already, you don't have a lot to latch onto, so to then do time jumping also makes it a little bit more confusing for people. So I would have liked.
It did for me.
I didn't like that aspect. Why over confuse it? You're not giving people a lot here.
Yeah. I got the sense he was doing what he was asked to do. I just don't know 100% what that was.
I've heard quite often that Terrence does not necessarily give specific direction.
Okay, interesting.
That he gives more generalized direction, like slower, faster, quicker, those kind of things, rather than, I need you to reach down into your soul and I need to see the angst on your face in this moment. He's like, not that kind of guy.
Think of a time when. Yeah. Okay, interesting.
I enjoy Terrence Malick films. I enjoy this film. I hope I never have to watch it again. Because those films, it is a one-off experience. You really don't need to revisit them again.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say I am never going to watch this movie again because I didn't want to watch it the second time. But we did. Just as you did your Life is Beautiful moment, I did my Thin Red Line moment.
Fair enough.
For different reasons. Okay.
All right. I am going to take a guess and say that you believe the Academy was wrong. Shakespeare in Love should not have won. I don't think that's going to come as a shock to anybody.
That is correct.
And I'm going to say that you believe Saving Private Ryan should have won.
And that is correct.
Excellente.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say the same.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yes. No question.
While I do enjoy the Thin Red Line, as far as what I am accustomed and used to and want from movies, Saving Private Ryan has everything that you want from a movie on every level. Like, it's a period piece, so the costuming is fantastic. The
Apparently,
actors,
even the underwear.
yes, the actors are. Everybody is perfect in their roles. I cannot think of a single person who was miscast
Nope.
in any way in this throughout the entire thing. The acting, the direction, the action. Like, you have, as you like to point out, your big moments, your quiet moments. This movie is just the perfection of everything you want in a movie. Has some minor flaws, so it's not a perfect movie,
Sure.
but it has everything, and the other films only had certain things.
Exactly. And Shakespeare in Love was just a slip of a movie,
Yeah.
especially when compared to the rest of these. You know, it really was. If I had to go second place, I probably would have gone Elizabeth.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do for second.
Would you have
place.
done Thin Red Line, maybe?
That's a difficult choice, because I think that it's Saving Private Ryan and everything else
Yeah.
is so far down below it that it's hard to then pick another one
No.
out of those.
No, you're right. That makes sense. So, all right.
All right.
I think we actually agree with the world, if not the Academy.
Yeah, everybody was very upset on Steven's behalf for
Yeah.
this one.
He won Best Director, though, right?
He did, but
okay.
not picture.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let us know what you think, comments, all that kind of stuff. See ya.